I knew there was a change in my life, and it hasn't been an easy road. I have made mistakes, but I do know that Christ changes lives, and He does it one step at a time, and He doesn't bombard us with all of the mess that we have in our lives. He cleans me up one day at a time, and that's all I ask. My name is Gail Tuckey, and this is my story. Growing up as a child, I had a pretty good life. I had two parents that loved me. We were pretty close as a family. We did a lot together. We had 6 siblings in my family, and we were pretty close. And I was especially pretty close to my dad. And about when I was 20 years old, I had moved out. I had gotten a phone call about 2 o'clock in the morning that my dad had passed away. I felt like my world was falling apart. I thought everything that life was throwing at me was just a mess. And so I quickly turned to drugs, and I turned to alcohol, and I turned to just hanging out with all around crowds. And one weekend I was out at the bar, and I had met Fred. And Fred and I started dating, and we eventually got married, and we had Emily. And after Emily was born, Fred's life completely changed. She was about 2 months old, and he got invited to Promise Keepers, which I didn't know anything about it. I just knew it had something to do with the church. And I remember him coming home, and he was so excited about what he had done, and he had told me that he'd rededicated his life to Christ. And at that time, I had no clue what he was even saying, or even what that meant. And I remember him saying, well, we need to start going to church. And I agreed with it because I wanted Emily to be raised in a church. Even though I wasn't raised in a church, I thought, this is something that I can do for my daughter. And so we started to go to church, and I was listening, but I wasn't listening. I wasn't getting what the pastors was saying. It was probably 2 months after Fred had rededicated his life. Fred had quit drinking, but I still was drinking once in a while, and I went to a cousin's wedding one weekend, and Fred had stayed home with Emily. And I remember just drinking too much that night, and I had to drive home. And my mom wanted to come stay the night with me because she didn't want to drive all the way home, and it was late at night. So I drove home from Gagetown to Unionville at the time, and there was so much guilt and so much humility and so much shame I felt over all the way home. I just felt so overwhelmed with all that. By the time I got home, I got my mom to bed, and I couldn't sleep that night. And so I went out into my vehicle and just turned up the radio, and I just gave it all to God. I asked Christ to come into my life that night. I asked Him to help me to stop drinking. I asked Him to just change my life. And He did. And He does it one step at a time.